Captain Daniel Harrison stood on the bridge of the UNS Titan and read the alien message one more time. The Galactic Assembly had been very clear in their transmission, and they wanted Earth to send a small diplomatic shuttle with no weapons and a tiny crew to make first contact. Commander Lisa Martinez looked at the massive alien space station that hung beyond Jupiter, and she knew this was the most important moment in human history. The station was 50 kilometers across, and it gleamed like silver in the darkness of space. Lieutenant Peter Collins spoke from his station and told the captain that Ambassador Rogers was ready to board the diplomatic shuttle. Daniel turned away from the view screen and made a decision that would change everything. He told his crew they would not send a shuttle, and instead the entire Titan would go to meet the aliens. Lisa stood up quickly because she understood this was breaking every rule the aliens had given them. The aliens had specifically said that civilized species always send small unarmed shuttles to first contact meetings. Daniel explained his thinking to his officers, and he said the aliens assumed Earth already knew galactic protocols. They thought humans had done this before, and they expected Earth to follow rules that humanity never agreed to. If they arrived in a tiny shuttle, then Earth would look weak and desperate for approval. But if they showed up in their mightiest warship, then they would announce that humanity was strong and independent. Lieutenant Amy Bishop said the aliens might see this as an insult or even an act of war. Daniel knew this was risky, but he believed the assembly would respect strength more than they would respect obedience. He ordered Amy to plot a course to the alien station and told Peter to send a message announcing that the Titan was coming. The message was polite, but it made clear that Earth was sending its finest vessel because this meeting deserved nothing less. 20 minutes. Later, Ambassador Nathan Rogers arrived on the bridge, and he was not happy about the change in plans. He told Daniel this was highly irregular and could destroy any chance of good relations with the aliens. Daniel asked the ambassador what he had learned from studying the alien transmission. Nathan admitted the aliens expected Earth to already be part of their galactic community and to know the proper diplomatic forms. Daniel pointed out that if humans followed rules they never agreed to, then where would it end? Would Earth have to follow alien trade laws and territorial claims and accept whatever position the aliens assigned to humanity? Nathan looked at the view screen for a long moment and finally agreed that Daniel might be right. If this went wrong, both their careers would be over, but if Earth started by being weak, then humanity might never recover from that first impression. The hours passed slowly as the Titan moved toward the station, and every crew member knew what was at stake. Dr. Helen Carter came to the bridge because she was the expert on alien cultures, and she wanted to observe everything. Peter announced that the aliens had responded, and they wanted to know why Earth was sending a warship instead of a shuttle. Daniel told him to answer honestly and explain that the Titan was their finest ship, and Earth would not insult the assembly by sending anything less. The response took 10 minutes to arrive, and when it came, the view screen showed an alien for the first time. The creature was tall and thin with 4 arms and skin that changed colors from blue to purple. It introduced itself as Coordinator Thalon and asked why humans were violating the protocols. Nathan stepped forward and gave a diplomatic answer about how Earth had developed in isolation and never had the chance to learn assembly conventions. The Titan was many things, including an explorer and defender and a symbol of human achievement. Thalon seemed surprised and asked how Earth had developed faster than light travel and advanced weapons without any contact with other species. Nathan explained that Earth had sent colony ships into space centuries ago, and when those ships stopped reporting back, humanity built warships to find out what happened. The ambassador said, Earth did not come to beg for acceptance, but to meet galactic neighbors as equals. Thalon ended the transmission and said he needed to consult with the Assembly Council. The bridge was quiet after the alien disappeared from the screen. Lisa said they had definitely made an impression, and now they just had to hope it was the right kind. Daniel ordered his crew to maintain their positions and stay professional, because the aliens were certainly still watching. Everything the Titan did. More hours passed, and the tension on the bridge grew thicker. Peter reported increased communication traffic from the station, and it seemed like the aliens were having serious debates about what to do with Earth. Kyle Bennett came from engineering to report that all systems were ready in case the aliens decided to attack. Daniel thanked him and told him to keep his teams alert. Finally, after nearly 2 hours, a new transmission arrived. This time, it was not Coordinator Thalen, but a different alien. The creature was broad and heavily armored with thick plates covering its body and multiple eyes arranged down its face. It introduced itself as General Corvus of the Assembly Defense Force. The general wanted to know the Titan's true intentions. Daniel stood and told the alien that Earth came in peace to establish diplomatic relations. Corvus pointed out that the Titan carried enough weapons to threaten the station and asked why a peaceful species would arrive in such a dangerous ship. Daniel explained that humans built the Titan to protect themselves because they did not know what dangers existed in the galaxy. Being strong did not make them hostile. General Corvus said he had scanned the Titan and found that humans had developed impressive technology without any outside help. This should not have been possible for an isolated species. Amy spoke up and explained that Earth had vast resources from mining asteroids and building orbital facilities for centuries. Corvus seemed to understand and mentioned the missing colony ships. He asked if Earth built warships to find them or avenge them. Daniel corrected him and said they built ships to protect humanity from whatever might be out there. The general was quiet for a long moment, and then he explained that the Assembly Council was divided about Earth. Some species wanted to welcome humanity immediately, while others wanted to quarantine Earth until they understood human nature better. A few aliens wanted Earth to leave and come back only when they learned proper protocols. Corvus said the Council had decided to offer Earth a choice. They could dock with the station and submit to inspections and accept Assembly security forces on their ship, or they could stay where they were and allow a small alien delegation to visit the Titan instead. The first option meant faster acceptance but required giving up control of their ship. The second option let them keep their sovereignty, but the outcome would be uncertain. Daniel asked for time to discuss this with his senior staff. They gathered in a conference room and debated both options. Lisa did not want alien guards on the Titan, and she worried about what would happen if the aliens saw human technology they did not like. Nathan pointed out that refusing to cooperate might cost them this entire opportunity. Helen suggested the second option as a compromise that showed good faith without surrendering control. After much discussion, Daniel decided they would allow the delegation to visit the Titan. When he told General Corvus the decision, the alien seemed satisfied. He said a delegation would arrive in 4 hours and they would represent multiple assembly species. Corvus warned Daniel that everything Earth did in the coming days would be watched and judged. Where humanity ended up in the galactic hierarchy would depend on how well they handled this process. The transmission ended, and Daniel told his crew to prepare. In 4 hours, aliens would walk through the Titan and decide if humanity deserved a place among the stars. The real test was about to begin. The alien shuttle approached the Titan slowly and carefully, and Daniel watched it dock with his ship. He stood in the receiving bay with Ambassador Rogers and 6 security officers. Lieutenant Jake Morrison led the security team, and he had positioned his people carefully to look professional but not threatening. The shuttle landed softly and its hatch opened. General Corvus emerged first, and he was even more impressive in person. The alien stood 7 feet tall with armored plates covering his broad body and multiple eyes that seemed to look everywhere at once. Daniel stepped forward and welcomed the general aboard the Titan. Behind Corvus came a dozen more aliens, and each one was stranger and more fascinating than the last. There was a being made of crystal that chimed when it moved, and a creature covered in living moss, and something that floated above the deck, like a cloud of contained gas coordinator. Thalen came last, and his skin shifted through different colors as he looked. Around the bay, a 4-armed alien introduced itself as Scholar Myrex and explained it was here to study human technology. Another, called Trade Master Zephan, wanted to understand Earth's economy. There was also Dr. Solari, who had sharp teeth and predatory eyes, and Harmony Speaker Vess, whose voice seemed to resonate at strange frequencies. Constructor Blaine had more tools than limbs, and several other aliens each represented different parts of assembly society. Daniel led them into the ship's corridors, and he could see the aliens examining every detail. The Titan had been cleaned until every surface gleamed. Scholar Myrex seemed especially fascinated, and its luminescent patterns pulsed faster as they walked. Coordinator Thalen commented that the ship was quite large at 4 kilometers, and asked how long it took to build. Daniel explained that construction in orbital facilities took nearly 10 years. General Corvus stated flatly that they built the Titan for war. Daniel corrected him and said they built her to survive because they did not know what was out there. They passed through engineering where Kyle Bennett was working with his teams. Scholar Myrex stopped at a viewport showing the main reactor and called the fusion containment field crude but effective. Kyle bristled at the word crude, but Myrex explained it meant no insult. The alien said developing fusion power independently was impressive, even if assembly designs were more efficient. They continued through the ship, and Daniel answered increasingly technical questions about weapons and propulsion and life support. He watched the aliens carefully, trying to read their reactions. General Corvus remained professional and unreadable. Scholar Myrex seemed genuinely impressed by human innovation. Trademaster Zephon made constant notes on a device built into its arm. When they reached the bridge, the alien spread out to examine the command center coordinator. Thalen pointed out that human ships commanded from an exposed position instead of deep inside protective armor. Daniel explained that visibility was worth the risk because a captain needed to see what was happening. Lisa approached from her tactical station and introduced herself. General Corvus asked permission to examine the weapon systems, and Lisa showed him a simplified display. The alien noted railguns for kinetic weapons and missiles for long-range attacks, and laser batteries for defense. He asked about the plasma projectors, and Lisa explained they were experimental weapons that accelerated ionized gas to high velocities. Corvus called them crude but clever, just like Myrex had said about the reactor. He asked Lisa directly if she had ever used these weapons against living opponents. Lisa said they had only fired at unmanned targets because Earth had never encountered another species before. Dr. Solari asked about the missing colony ships and wondered why humans built all these weapons but never actually fought anyone. Daniel said they built the Titan to be ready so they would not be helpless if they found enemies, but they always hoped to find friends instead. Scholar Myrex asked how humans developed all this technology in complete isolation. Daniel explained that humanity had dreamed of the stars for thousands of years. When colony ships stopped calling home Earth, realized something dangerous might exist in space, so they stopped dreaming and started building. And the Titan was the result. Coordinator, Thalen asked quietly, what humanity wanted, now that they had found the assembly instead of enemies. Daniel said their goals had not changed. They still wanted to survive and find out what happened to their people, but now they also wanted to understand the galaxy trade. Master Zephon asked where Earth saw itself in the assembly. Hierarchy. Daniel met the alien's golden eyes and said with respect that Earth did not see itself in anyone's hierarchy. Humans wanted to contribute as equals, not as subordinates. There was a moment of silence, and several aliens exchanged looks. Zephon said that was an ambitious position for a species, just discovering they were not alone. Nathan stepped forward and said, ambition had served humanity well. Earth went from primitive tools to spaceflight very quickly, and overcame diseases and wars and united the whole planet specifically to reach space. Humans did not lack ambition, but they lacked knowledge, and that was what they hoped to gain from the assembly. Zephon replied that knowledge was not free and asked what Earth offered in return. Daniel had expected this question. He said Earth offered fresh perspectives and technologies developed differently from assembly standards. Humans were used to solving problems alone, which made them creative and innovative. Earth also had resources from mining an entire solar system for centuries. General Corvus added that Earth also offered military force. The Titan was just one ship, but she represented significant combat capability. Lisa asked directly if that concerned the General. Corvus said he was concerned about any unknown variable. The assembly maintained peace through overwhelming defense and mutual cooperation. A new military power changed calculations and created uncertainty. Daniel said he wanted to reduce that uncertainty. Earth had no territorial ambitions beyond their solar system. They built the Titan to protect themselves, not to threaten others. If they joined the assembly, they would honor its rules and respect its boundaries. Coordinator, Thalen pointed out that Daniel spoke as if membership was uncertain. Daniel asked if it was not. They were here to assess Earth, but Earth was also assessing the assembly. This was mutual evaluation harmony. Speaker Vess made musical sounds and said humans were either very brave or very foolish. The assembly did not typically accept such independent attitudes. Nathan said smoothly that perhaps the assembly should expand its typical practices. The galaxy was big enough for different approaches, Scholar. Mirex's patterns pulsed rapidly, and the alien said this was exactly what it hoped to see. Humans were fascinating because they did not fit normal patterns. They developed in isolation but were technologically sophisticated. They arrived in a warship, but spoke of peace. They sought membership but resisted subordination. General Corvus countered that from a security perspective, new things were concerning. Daniel proposed an idea that formed as he spoke. He suggested a demonstration where the Titan could show its capabilities in a controlled test. The general could see what Earth was capable of, and humans could prove their intentions. Lisa picked up on the idea and suggested a tactical exercise with set parameters. Trademaster Zephan asked what would happen if they failed. The test, Daniel said, then the aliens would know human limitations, and either way they would get valuable information. The aliens conferred rapidly in multiple languages. Finally, Coordinator Thalen said the proposal was acceptable. The assembly would create a tactical scenario for the Titan to engage. They would observe and evaluate the performance. General Corvus said this would happen in 3 days. The tour continued for several more hours. The delegation visited crew, quarters and medical facilities and recreational areas. They saw how humans lived in space and how the crew worked together. Scholar Mirex was particularly interested in social structures and asked many questions about relationships. When the delegation prepared to leave, Coordinator Thalen pulled Daniel aside privately. The alien's skin shifted to neutral gray. Thalen said he wanted to offer advice. The tactical exercise was important, but it was not the only test. The assembly was watching everything about Earth, including how they fought and negotiated and treated their own people. Everything was being evaluated. Daniel said they were trying to be themselves and show who humanity really was. Thalen said being themselves might not be enough if humans were too different from what the assembly could accept. There were species in the council who feared change and wanted to maintain the status quo. Earth's arrival threatened that. The coordinator told Daniel to make sure he gave moderate voices enough evidence to support humanity. Daniel asked which voice Thalen represented. The alien's skin rippled with colors that might have been amusement. Thalen said he was the voice of curiosity. He wanted to see what happened when someone shook up their comfortable galaxy, but he also wanted Earth to survive the experience. The delegation departed and their shuttle glided away with the same careful precision. It arrived with. Daniel stood in the observation deck watching them go with Nathan beside him. The ambassador said it went better than expected. Daniel wondered if it really did. They had committed to a military demonstration in 3 days. If they failed or looked weak, they would lose everything. Nathan countered that if they succeeded, they would prove themselves. This was what Daniel wanted, a chance to show the galaxy what humanity could do. Daniel agreed, but said he now had 3 days to make sure they did not fail. 3 days passed in a blur of preparation and planning, and now the moment had arrived. Daniel stood on the bridge watching 12 assembly observation ships position themselves around the exercise zone. Each vessel bristled with sensors pointed at the Titan like unblinking eyes. Lisa commented from tactical that they were certainly being thorough. She counted recording equipment that would capture everything from energy emissions to individual crew thermal signatures. Daniel said they had nothing to hide and told his crew to let the aliens watch. The past 3 days had been intense. General Corvus provided the scenario parameters, and the Titan would face multiple challenges. They had to navigate an asteroid field while under simulated fire. They had to defend against drone attackers. They had to perform a rescue in a debris field. And finally, they had to fight an adaptive holographic enemy that would learn from their tactics. Kyle Bennett appeared on the bridge, and his uniform showed signs of sleepless nights. He reported all systems operating at peak efficiency with redundant backups on every critical system. Daniel thanked him and told him to rest. But Kyle laughed and said he would not miss this for anything. Lisa ran through her weapons checks and confirmed all systems were ready. The plasma projectors gave intermittent readings but should hold for the exercise. Amy Bishop looked up from navigation, and her young face showed strain from 3 days of preparation. She had run the asteroid field scenario 500 times in simulation and knew every possible route. Daniel told her to trust her instincts because she was one of the best navigators in the fleet. Peter Collins announced an incoming transmission from General Corvus. The observation fleet was in position and ready to begin. Daniel settled into his command chair and looked at his crew. These were professionals and the best humanity had to offer. He opened the ship-wide communication and told everyone that in a few minutes they would begin the exercise. Every crew member had trained for this. The assembly was watching and judging and deciding if humanity deserved a place among the stars. He told them to show the galaxy what they were capable of. Daniel closed the channel and told Peter to inform Corvus they were ready. The response came quickly, wishing them good luck. The view screen displayed the tactical overlay for the first challenge. The asteroid field appeared as dense red markers. Green waypoints marked the required route. Yellow indicators showed simulated weapons fire that would track them. Daniel told Amy the field was hers. The countdown reached 0, and Amy engaged the engines. The Titan surged forward, and then they were among the asteroids. Amy flew the massive warship like a fighter craft threading between tumbling rocks the size of mountains. The Titan rolled and dove and climbed through the three-dimensional maze with impossible grace. Alarms blared as simulated weapons tracked them, and Lisa activated countermeasures. Peter called out obstacles and Amy handled them calmly. An asteroid passed so close its shadow crossed the bridge. Daniel watched his navigator work with pride. Amy made it look easy, but he could see the intense concentration. On her face, Lisa announced they were approaching the halfway point with 0 simulated hits. They emerged from the asteroid field 3 minutes later with the hull intact and no errors recorded. Daniel smiled as the observation fleet data streams lit up with activity. Amy had passed the first test perfectly. The second challenge was more aggressive. The Titan faced 30 attack drones approaching from multiple vectors. Their tactics were coordinated by an artificial intelligence that would learn from each failed attack. Daniel told Lisa the drones were hers. The laser batteries came alive, first sweeping through space with deadly precision. Drones disintegrated in flashes of light. But the drones were learning and adapting and making themselves harder targets. Lisa switched to railguns and the kinetic weapons sent hypervelocity slugs screaming through the void. More drones fell, but several broke through the defensive perimeter. Peter warned that 4 drones had penetrated inner defense range. Lisa fired the plasma projectors and the experimental weapons proved their worth. The ionized gas streams tore the nearest drones apart. The remaining 3 fell to precise laser fire, but more drones were coming and they had learned from their destroyed siblings. They attacked from blind spots and used the ship's mass as cover and coordinated to overwhelm individual defensive sectors. Daniel ordered evasive pattern Delta 4. The Titan began to move, and not just defend, but maneuver. This kept the drones off balance. Lisa adjusted her firing solutions on the Flykyle's team's rerouted power to weapons that needed it most. It was a coordinated effort with the entire ship working as one organism. The last drone fell 15 minutes into the engagement. The Titan hung in space with her hull intact and weapons cooling and crew breathing hard. But victorious Kyle reported minor overheating in the port laser battery, but nothing serious. Peter added, there was no hull damage. Lisa said with satisfaction that the drones never touched them. The third challenge tested precision and humanity. A simulated distress call came from a civilian vessel crippled and drifting in a debris field. The Titan had to reach it and dock with it, and evacuate the crew before. Debris claimed both ships. Dr. Sarah Wells reported from sickbay that medical teams were standing by. Amy studied the tactical display and said the debris field was dense, but she could get them in. The approach was slow and measured. When large debris threatened to collide, Lisa used laser bursts to break it apart. Amy announced they were in position, and Kyle took over. The docking tube extended like a flexible cylinder reaching toward the simulated civilian vessel. Kyle made minute adjustments to account for the relative motion of both ships. The tube made contact and sealed and pressurized. Jake Morrison reported the evacuation proceeding smoothly. It took 12 minutes to complete with the Titan holding steady while debris rained around them. The last civilian came aboard and all hatches secured. Amy backed the Titan away from the doomed vessel with the same careful precision she used approaching. They emerged from the debris field without incident. Lisa said quietly that 3 challenges were down with 1 to go. The final challenge was what Daniel had been dreading, a combat simulation against an adaptive enemy that would learn from their tactics. The enemy ship appeared on sensors as a holographic construct. It looked formidable and larger than the Titan and bristling with weapons. Daniel reminded his crew that this thing would adapt to whatever they threw at it. They needed to be unpredictable and creative. Lisa said with a grim smile that they needed to be human about it. Daniel agreed and told her to engage when ready. The battle began, and immediately Daniel saw why this was saved for last. The holographic enemy was skilled with sophisticated tactics. It attacked from multiple angles and forced the Titan into defensive positions, and exploited every hesitation. Lisa fought back with everything. The Titan had railguns and lasers worked together. Missiles launched in complex patterns. The plasma projectors added their fury, but the enemy adapted quickly. It learned to dodge railgun slugs and predict laser patterns and intercept missiles. Within minutes, it had neutralized much of the Titan's offensive capability. Peter said with concern that it was learning too fast. Daniel made a decision and told Lisa to cease fire all weapons. Silent Lisa looked at him in shock but followed the order. Daniel told Amy to bring them about and point the stern at the enemy. Amy protested that their engines would be exposed. Daniel said the enemy would not fire because it had learned humans fight by attacking. Now they would show it something different. The Titan turned, presenting her vulnerable stern to the enemy. The enemy fired a barrage that should have crippled the ship, but Amy had positioned them perfectly, and the weapons fire passed through space where the engines appeared to be, but were not quite. Daniel ordered emergency power to rear thrusters. He told Lisa to ram the enemy. The Titan accelerated backward with shocking speed. Ships did not ram each other in modern space. Combat, it was inefficient and dangerous and illogical, but it worked. The Titan collided with the holographic enemy. Her simulated mass and momentum overwhelmed the construct. The enemy ship's image flickered and dissolved. Victory through ramming. The bridge was silent for a moment. Then Lisa started laughing with relief and triumph. Peter looked stunned and reported transmissions from the observation fleet. They were analyzing what happened. Daniel had surprised them. General Corvus appeared on the view screen. His multiple eyes blinked in that pattern that meant surprise. He said Daniel's solution was highly unconventional. Daniel pointed out that it was effective. Corvus agreed, and explained that the enemy artificial intelligence was designed to adapt to conventional tactics. Daniel employed a tactic so unconventional that it had no response. Pattern. Daniel said humans called it thinking outside the box. When the rules did not work, they changed the game. Corvus repeated the phrase as if testing it. He said it was very human. The general's image disappeared and Daniel turned to his crew. They looked exhausted but undeniably proud. They had passed every test with skill and determination and creativity. Daniel told them they had done well and ordered return to normal operations. Nathan appeared from the observation area where he had been watching. He said the performance was extraordinary, but Daniel had taken a huge risk with the ramming maneuver. Daniel replied it was calculated. The holographic enemy could not physically harm them. And the test was about tactical thinking, not just firepower. They showed the aliens that humans could adapt faster than artificial intelligence. The waiting stretched from days into weeks, and the Titan maintained position near the assembly station. Daniel spent more time in observation lounges staring at the alien station and wondering what debates happened within its walls. Kyle found him there one day with 2 cups of coffee. He told Daniel that second-guessing would not help anything. They showed the aliens who humans were, and now the aliens would decide if they wanted them or not. Daniel asked what would happen if the assembly rejected. Kyle shrugged and said they would go home and keep exploring alone and check back in a few decades. The galaxy was not going anywhere. Amy appeared at the lounge entrance apologizing for the interruption. She said there was activity at the station, with many ships arriving. Peter thought they might be council members returning from home systems for a final vote. Daniel hurried to the bridge with Kyle close behind. The view screen showed dozens of ships approaching from various directions. Each one was unique in design and origin. Peter observed this was the most traffic they had seen since arriving. Some ships were coming from deep space and must have traveled for weeks. Lisa added that the council was preparing for something big. You did not Call members from across the galaxy for routine decisions. Nathan appeared on the bridge and said they were going to vote. This was it, and they were about to find out. Earth's fate hours ticked by as ships continued arriving. Daniel ordered his crew to maintain professional operations despite the tension. They could not afford to look anxious when aliens were still observing them. After nearly 10 hours of arrivals, Peter received a transmission coordinator. Thalen said the Assembly Council completed its deliberations and was ready to announce its decision. They requested human presence at the station immediately. Daniel stood and straightened his uniform. He told Nathan and Lisa and Helen they were coming with him. Peter would have the bridge. The shuttle trip felt both too long and too short. Daniel's mind raced through possible scenarios. Nathan sat in composed silence with his diplomatic mask firmly in place. Lisa checked her sidearm for the third time out of nervous habit. Helen reviewed her notes on assembly protocols. They were met by Thalen and Corvus, and both aliens radiated tension. Thalen said the council had reached its decision after extensive debate and numerous votes and significant disagreement. Lisa muttered that this did not sound promising. Corvus replied it was neither promising nor concerning, but simply the reality of assembly governance. When hundreds of species tried to agree on something, it took time. They were led through corridors to the council chamber. The vast room was filled with hundreds of beings, and the air hummed with conversation. Daniel and Nathan were directed to stand on the central platform. High Counselor Draken rose from the highest tier. The massive being with metallic skin commanded immediate attention. Draken announced they had deliberated extensively on the question of Earth's membership. The discussion had been heated with passionate arguments on all sides. Some species advocated strongly for immediate acceptance. Others argued just as strongly for caution or outright rejection. The Council had considered Earth's technological capabilities and military strength and cultural values. They had evaluated human psychology and social structures and potential contributions to the Assembly. Most importantly, they had debated what Earth's independence and unpredictability meant for galactic stability. Daniel felt his pulse quicken as Dracon paused. The counselor said the Assembly had reached a decision, but before announcing it, he wanted Daniel and Nathan to understand the complexity. This was not a simple yes or no. Earth presented unique challenges that required unique solutions. Nathan asked what that meant. Dracon explained that the Council voted to offer Earth provisional membership in the Galactic Assembly. Provisional membership meant humans would have access to Assembly space and trade and knowledge, but they would not have full voting rights in Council decisions. They would be observed and evaluated over a period of 10 standard years. At the end of that period, the Council would vote again on whether to grant full membership. Daniel felt relief wash over him, but also frustration. Provisional membership was better than rejection, but it was not the equality he had hoped for. Asked what restrictions would apply during the provisional period, Dracon listed several conditions. Earth would be allowed to maintain military forces, including the Titan, but could not deploy them in Assembly space without permission. Humans could trade with Assembly species, but would pay higher tariffs than full members. Earth would have a representative at Council meetings who could speak, but not vote. Human ships would be monitored when traveling through Assembly territory, and Earth would submit to annual inspections to ensure compliance with Assembly laws. Nathan asked if these restrictions were negotiable. Dracon said they were not. The Council spent weeks debating and compromising to reach this agreement. Some species wanted much harsher restrictions, others wanted no restrictions at all. This was the middle ground that enough Council members could accept. He asked if Earth refused these terms. The alternative was rejection and isolation. Humans would be asked to leave Assembly space and not return for at least 50 standard years. Daniel and Nathan looked at each other. This was not what they had hoped for, but it was something. It was a foot in the door, and a chance to prove themselves over time. Nathan asked if they could have time to discuss this with their government. Dracon said they had 24 hours to accept or reject the offer. After that, the offer would be withdrawn. The humans were dismissed and returned to their shuttle in silence. Once they were safely away from the station, Nathan let out a long breath. He said provisional membership was insulting, but it was better than nothing. Daniel disagreed. He said it was not better if it meant accepting permanent second-class status. What guarantee did they have that full membership would come after 10 years? What if the assembly just kept extending the provisional period indefinitely? Lisa pointed out that at least they would have access to alien technology and trade. That alone could advance Earth decades or centuries forward. Helen added that provisional membership also meant learning about the galaxy. They would discover what happened to the colony ships. They would understand galactic politics and cultures. That knowledge was invaluable even without full membership. Daniel knew they were right, but something felt wrong about accepting subordinate status. Earth had come here as equals, and now they were being told to prove themselves like children. Nathan said they needed to think strategically. Provisional membership gave them access and information and connections. Over 10 years, they could build relationships with individual species. They could demonstrate their value repeatedly. When the next vote came, they would have allies arguing for full membership. It was not ideal, but it was pragmatic. Daniel asked what the alternative was. They could reject the offer and go home. Earth would develop alone, and maybe in 50 years they would try again. But 50 years was a long time. The colony ships would remain. Mystery's human advancement would be limited to what they could discover themselves, and they would always wonder what might have been. The shuttle docked with the Titan, and they gathered the senior staff for a conference. Daniel explained the Council's offer and the restrictions and the choice they faced. The reactions were mixed. Kyle said accepting provisional membership felt like surrender. Amy argued that access to assembly knowledge was too valuable to pass up. Peter worried about the monitoring and inspections. Lisa wanted to know if they could negotiate better terms. Daniel said Dracon was clear that the terms were final. They either accepted or rejected. The debate went on for hours. Everyone had strong opinions and valid concerns. Finally, Nathan called for order. He said as ambassador it was his responsibility to make the recommendation to Earth's government, but he wanted Daniel's input as the military commander. Daniel thought for a long moment. He had brought the Titan here hoping to establish humanity as equals. That had not happened, but complete rejection would be worse. At least provisional membership gave them a path forward, however imperfect. He told Nathan he supported accepting the offer. It was not what they wanted, but it was what they could get. And over 10 years they would work to change the situation. Nathan nodded and said he would send the recommendation to Earth. The response from Earth came within 6 hours. The United Nations Council had debated and voted. They authorized Nathan to accept provisional membership on behalf of humanity. There was disappointment that full membership was not offered, but they agreed this was better than isolation. Daniel sent a transmission to Coordinator Thalen. He said Earth accepted the Assembly's offer of provisional membership. They understood the restrictions and would comply with the terms. Thalen responded quickly, and his skin shifted to warm colors. He said he was pleased by Earth's decision. Many on the council would be relieved. He also said privately that he believed this was the right choice. 10 years would pass quickly and humans would have opportunities to prove themselves. The formal ceremony took place 2 days later. Daniel and Nathan returned to the station with a larger delegation. They stood before the council while Dracon officially welcomed Earth to the Galactic Assembly. The words were grand and ceremonial, but Daniel could not help feeling they rang hollow. Earth was welcomed, but only conditionally, accepted but not trusted, given access but not equality. After the ceremony, various alien species approached to introduce themselves. Some seemed genuinely friendly and interested in learning about humanity. The Titan began her journey back to Earth carrying news that would change humanity forever. Daniel stood on the bridge watching the assembly station shrink in the view screen. They were leaving as provisional members instead of full equals, but they were leaving with knowledge and access and hope. Lisa approached and said quietly that it felt strange to be going home after everything that happened. Daniel agreed. They left Earth not knowing what they would find, and now they returned knowing the galaxy was vast and complicated and not particularly welcoming. But at least they knew. Nathan joined them and mentioned he was already working on his report to the United Nations. He would need to explain provisional membership and the restrictions, and what it meant for Earth's future. The politicians would have many questions. Some would be angry about the conditions. Others would celebrate the achievement of making contact. His job was to help them understand both the opportunities and the limitations. Kyle came to the bridge and reported all systems running smoothly for the journey home. He asked Daniel privately how he felt about the outcome. Daniel said honestly that he felt conflicted. Part of him was proud. They succeeded in making contact. Part of him was frustrated. They did not achieve full equality. Kyle said that was fair, but pointed out they had only just arrived. The galaxy had existed for millions of years without humans. It would take time for Earth to find its proper place. Helen appeared, with preliminary analysis of all the data they collected. She had recordings of every interaction with the aliens. She had cultural observations and linguistic patterns and social dynamics. This information would be invaluable for future human diplomats. She was especially interested in the differences between species. Some, like Coordinator Thalen, seemed genuinely curious about humans. Others, like certain council members, were suspicious or dismissive. Understanding these attitudes would help Earth navigate. Galactic politics. Amy called from navigation that she had plotted the most efficient course home. It would take them 3 weeks to reach Earth. Peter added that he was preparing detailed communication logs for the government. Everything they said and did would be analyzed by experts. Daniel ordered the crew to maintain normal operations during the journey. They would rotate shifts and conduct routine maintenance and prepare comprehensive reports. This was not a pleasure cruise, but a working voyage. Home. As days passed, the crew began to process everything that happened. Some felt pride in what they accomplished. Others felt disappointment in the restrictions placed on Earth. Many felt both emotions simultaneously. Daniel found himself having conversations with crew members who sought him out. Lieutenant Amy Bishop came to his ready room one evening. She asked if he thought they made the right choice, accepting provisional membership. Daniel said he believed they made the only realistic choice. Rejection would have meant isolation. Provisional membership at least gave them a chance. Amy said she worried that 10 years was a long time. What if the Assembly never granted full membership? What if this was as good as it would ever get? Daniel told her honestly that he did not know, but he believed humanity would keep pushing forward regardless. That was what humans did. They adapted and persevered and found ways to succeed. Lieutenant Jake Morrison had different concerns. He worried about the monitoring and inspections Earth would face. He asked what would happen if humans accidentally violated some obscure assembly law. Would they lose membership entirely? Daniel said that was a valid concern. Earth needed to learn assembly laws quickly and thoroughly, and he also believed the restrictions would push humans to be more careful and deliberate. Sometimes limitations forced creativity. Kyle spent hours talking with Daniel about the technology they glimpsed. The aliens had fusion reactors far more efficient than human designs. They had materials that could withstand incredible stress. They had medical technology that could cure diseases Earth still struggled with, but they also had bureaucracy and rigid thinking and fear of change. Kyle said he was excited about what Earth could learn, but also confident humans could contribute. Different did not mean inferior. Human innovation came from solving problems without outside help. That independence created unique perspectives. Lisa was more pragmatic in her assessment. She told Daniel the provisional membership was a tactical position. Earth was now inside the galactic community. Even if at the lowest level from inside they could observe and learn and build relationships. After 10 years, they would understand the assembly far better. That knowledge would give them leverage when the full membership vote came. She also noted that the Titan had impressed the aliens. The combat demonstration showed humans were capable warriors. That reputation would serve Earth. Well, people respected strength even when they feared it. Nathan spent much time discussing the political implications. He said Earth's governments would need to unite more closely. They could not afford internal divisions when dealing with hundreds of alien species. The United Nations would need more authority and resources. Individual nations would need to surrender some sovereignty for the common good. He worried this would be difficult. Humans were proud of their diverse cultures and independent nations, but galactic politics required a unified voice. Daniel said humanity had united before when facing existential challenges. They united to build colony ships, and to create the Titan, they would unite again because the alternative was failure. As the Titan approached Earth, the crew prepared for arrival. They cleaned the ship and organized their reports and readied themselves for the attention they would receive. They were returning as heroes who made first contact, but also as diplomats who accepted limited membership. The response would be complicated. Peter picked up transmissions from Earth as they entered the solar system. News of their return had spread quickly. Every major government and media organization wanted interviews, scientists wanted data, military leaders wanted tactical assessments. The public wanted to know what the aliens were like. Daniel recorded a general message that was broadcast to Earth. He explained they had made contact with the Galactic Assembly. He described the aliens and their vast civilization. He announced that Earth was now a provisional member. He explained the restrictions honestly, but also emphasized the opportunities. He told humanity they should be proud of what was accomplished but realistic about challenges ahead. The Titan entered Earth orbit 3 weeks after leaving the assembly station. Shuttle traffic immediately increased as officials came aboard. The Secretary General of the United Nations arrived with a delegation. They met in the conference room, and Nathan presented his detailed report. The Secretary General listened carefully and asked many questions. He wanted to know about assembly military capabilities. He wanted details on trade opportunities. He wanted to understand the political dynamics between species. He especially wanted to know about the missing colony ships. Nathan said the assembly had records of human vessels entering their space decades ago. Most had been intercepted, and their crews were alive. They had been integrated into various assembly societies. Some wanted to return to Earth while others had built new lives. This was perhaps the most emotional revelation. 23 colony ships had not been destroyed. Thousands of humans were alive in alien space families. Would be reunited, questions would be answered. The Secretary General said Earth would immediately request permission to contact these lost colonists. This alone made provisional membership worthwhile. Over the following weeks, Daniel and his crew were debriefed extensively. Military analysts studied the combat exercise recordings. Scientists examined the sensor data from alien ships. Linguists worked on the alien languages. Cultural experts analyzed social interactions. Earth began preparing for its new role in galactic affairs. A permanent embassy would be established at the assembly station. Diplomatic teams would be trained in alien protocols. Trade delegations would be organized. Scientists would prepare for technology exchanges. The United Nations also began discussing what would be needed to achieve full membership. They created a 10-year plan with specific goals: demonstrate peaceful intentions consistently, build strong relationships with key assembly species, contribute valuable knowledge and resources, avoid any actions that could be seen as threatening, show that humanity deserved to be treated as equals. Daniel was promoted to admiral and given command of Earth's expanding space fleet. The Titan would be joined by sister ships. Humanity would maintain its military strength while pursuing diplomatic goals. Lisa became his chief of staff. Kyle was assigned to oversee integration of alien technology into human designs. Amy and Peter both received commendations and new assignments. The crew of the Titan dispersed to share their knowledge across Earth's space program. 6 months after their return, Daniel stood in the observation deck of a space station orbiting Earth. He watched construction crews building new ships in orbital facilities. Humanity was expanding its presence in space faster than ever before. Nathan joined him and they stood in comfortable silence for a moment. The ambassador said he had just returned from the assembly station. He was establishing the permanent embassy. The aliens were cautious but cooperative. Some species were becoming friendly. Earth was slowly building a reputation as a reliable partner. Nathan said Coordinator Thalen sent personal greetings. The alien remained interested in human progress. He also warned that some council members were looking for reasons to extend the provisional period. Earth needed to be very careful. Daniel said humanity would be careful, but would not be timid.